Dear children, my dears, it's very important to take care of yourself and your beloved ones in this pandemic situation. So wherever you're going, wear mask, use sanitizers and keep social distance. Let's move on to our topic. In your last video, you studied about political science, first chapter, power sharing. Let's have a quick recall about what we have studied in our last class. We studied about power sharing, then about the ethnic composition of Belgium and about the accommodation of Belgium. So first of all, we want to know what is power sharing or what is the meaning of the term power sharing. Power sharing is a term used to describe a system of governance in which all major segments of societies are provided a permanent share of power. So once again, what is power sharing? It is a term used to describe a system of governance in which all major segments of societies are provided a permanent share of power. In all the democratic countries in the world, especially in India, power sharing is very important because by sharing powers between different organs of government or between different levels of government, it helps us to just safeguard the unity of the country, to govern the country in the proper way and to protect the rights and duties of the citizens. So in this chapter, you want to study two examples related to this. One is of Belgium and another one of Sri Lanka. Through these two examples, it's very clear to you about the main objective of power sharing. These two examples, that means the first example of Belgium shares a positive impact of power sharing, whereas the second example, that is Sri Lanka, it shares a negative impact. That means if we are not able to share our power in our country in the proper way, what will happen? All these we can understand very well with the example of Sri Lanka. You already studied about the ethnic composition of Belgium and how the Belgian leaders overcome their ethnic problems by adopting proper constitutional ideas and views. That's why when some of the European countries joined together to form the European Union, they selected Brussels, the capital city of Belgium, as its headquarters. So now we are moving towards our today's topic. Today we are going to study some of the most important topics related to our chapter power sharing. Which are the topics? The main topics are the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka, Majoritarianism policy, Act of 1956. Then what were the problems that led to a feeling of alienation in the minds of the Sri Lankan Tamils? Then about the demands of the Sri Lankan Tamils. Then about civil war and its consequences. The last one, why power sharing is desirable. To start with, we shall discuss about the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is an island nation a few kilometers away from the southern coast of Tamil Nadu. The population of Sri Lanka is about 2 crores, same as the population of Haryana. Like other South Asian countries, Sri Lanka is also having a diverse population. The population of Sri Lanka is divided into 2 major social groups. One is Sinhala speakers, it consists of 74%, and the second one is Tamil speakers, it consists of 18%. The Tamil speakers, they were again divided into 2 categories as Sri Lankan Tamils and Indian Tamils. The Sri Lankan Tamils, who were the Sri Lankan Tamils? The Tamil natives of the country, they were termed as Sri Lankan Tamils and it consists of 13%. And the Indian Tamils, whose forefathers came from India as plantation workers during the colonial period, they were called as Indian Tamils. Then the Sri Lankan Tamils, they were concentrated in the north and east of Sri Lanka. Then at last we want to study about the religion of the Sri Lankans. The most of the Sinhalas were Buddhist And the Tamil speakers, it consists of both the Hindus and the Muslims. And in Sri Lanka, Christianity is also there. And about 7% Christians are there in Sri Lanka. And this 7% Christians, it consists of both the Sinhala speakers and Tamil speakers. So once again, what about the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka? Sri Lanka is an island nation a few kilometers away from the southern coast of Tamil Nadu. About the population of Sri Lanka, it is 2 crores, same as the population of Haryana. Then, like other South Asian countries, Sri Lanka is also having a diverse population. The population of Sri Lanka is divided into 2 groups, 2 major social groups. One is the Sinhala speakers consist of 74% and another one is the Tamil speakers consist of 18%. And these Tamil speakers, they are again divided into 2 groups as Sri Lankan Tamils and Indian Tamils. Then who were the Sri Lankan Tamils? The Tamil natives of the country. They were called as Sri Lankan Tamils and they consist of 13%. And the Indian Tamils, whose forefathers came from India as plantation workers during the colonial period. They were called as Indian Tamils. Then the Sri Lankan Tamils, they were concentrated in the north and east of Sri Lanka. And about the religion of the Sri Lankans, most of the Sinhalas were Buddhist. The Tamil speakers, it consists of both the Hindus and the Muslims. And about 7% Christians are there in Sri Lanka. And it belongs to both the Sinhala speakers and Tamil speakers. So from this ethnic composition of Sri Lanka, we can understand that the country's population is divided on the basis of language or on the linguistic basis. The population of Sri Lanka is divided, and this linguistic basis or this language basis division of population created a lot of problems in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka emerged as an independent country in 1948. Soon after independence, the Sinhala leaders sought to secure dominance over their majority. As a result, the democratically elected government, with the help of the democratically elected government, the Sinhala leaders, they adopted a policy in Sri Lanka. It is known as a Majoritarianism policy. So, what is Majoritarianism or what is Majoritarianism policy? A belief that the majority community should be able to rule the country in whatever ways they want by disregarding the wishes and needs of the minority. That is known as a Majoritarianism. So once again, what is Majoritarianism? A belief that the majority community should be able to rule the country in whatever ways they want by disregarding the wishes and needs of the minority. It is known as a Majoritarianism. So they adopted this Majoritarianism policy. After that, in 1956, these Sinhala leaders, with the help of this democratically elected government and constitution, they passed an act. That act is known as the Act of 1956. So, in 1956, with the help of the constitution and government, the Sinhala leaders, they passed an act that is known as Act of 1956. This act consisted of 3 main provisions, and this act created a lot of problems in Sri Lanka. The 3 main provisions included in this act. The first one, Sinhala is recognized as the only official language in Sri Lanka, thus disregarding Tamil. The second one, the government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants in university positions and government jobs. The third one, a new constitution stimulated that the state shall protect and foster Buddhism. So once again, the 3 main provisions of the Act of 1956. The first one, Sinhala should be recognized as the only official language of Sri Lanka, thus disregarding Tamil. The second one, the government followed preferential policies that favored Sinhala applicants in university positions and government jobs. The third one, a new constitution stimulated that the state shall protect and foster Buddhism. So what happened? All these government policies coming one after the other created a feeling of alienation in the minds of the Tamil speakers, especially Sri Lankan Tamils. They felt that their culture, their language, their political rights, their right to secure jobs, and many of their rights were denied and ignored by the Sinhala leaders. So these Tamil leaders, what they do, they launched many political parties to fulfill their dreams and demands. So now we are going to study what were the demands of the Sri Lankan Tamils that they put forward by launching the political parties. Their first demand was that Tamil should be recognized as the official language along with the Sinhala. Their second demand, they want equal opportunity in jobs and university positions. And their third demand, their most important demand, that is regional autonomy. They want regional autonomy in regions like north and east part of Sri Lanka, where the Sri Lankan Tamils are concentrated. They want that area as their own regional autonomy, which were repeatedly denied by the Sinhala leaders. So what happened? In 1980, these Sri Lankan Tamil leaders, what they do? They launched many political organizations and they put forward their new demand that they want to have an independent Tamil state in that area, which were also repeatedly denied and ignored by these Sinhala leaders. So the end result of all these is the civil war broke out in Sri Lanka. So what is a civil war? A violent clash between different opposing groups within a country, which becomes so violent that it looks like a war. So what is a civil war? A violent clash between opposing groups within a country, which becomes so worse that it looks like a war, or it appears like a war. So this civil war in Sri Lanka, it created many consequences. So now we are going to study about the consequences of the civil war in Sri Lanka. So what were the consequences the civil war created in Sri Lanka? Thousands of people were killed in both the groups in Sri Lanka. Many were forced to leave the country as refugees. Many lost their livelihood. And the excellent record of Sri Lanka in education, health and several other areas like culture, then other economic areas were also have a terrible setback after this civil war. So once again, what were the consequences of civil war in Sri Lanka? Thousands of people from both the groups were killed as a part of this civil war. Many people forced to leave their country as refugees. Many lost their livelihood. The excellent record of Sri Lanka in education, health and cultural and several economic areas were also having a terrible setback after this civil war. So, from this example of Sri Lanka, it's very clear to you that if a majority community tried to force its dominance over others and refuse to share power in the proper way, it will undermine the unity of the country. So, from the example of Sri Lanka, we can understand from all these areas, we can understand that if we are not sharing our power in the proper way in our country, it will create many negative impact not only to the country but also to the citizens also. So the next topic related to this chapter, power sharing, that is the last topic. Why power sharing is desirable. That means why we are considering power sharing as excellent or fine. There are two sets of reasons why we consider power sharing as desirable or excellent or fine. One is the prudential reason and another one is a set of moral reasons. So the first one, the prudential reason. So there are some prudential reasons why we consider power sharing as excellent or fine. So first we want to know what is the meaning of the term prudential. What is the meaning of the term prudential? We are just finding out a solution after proper calculations of gains and losses. That is known as prudential. So by this prudential reason, we can consider power sharing is essential or excellent. Why? Because these prudential reasons, they are saying that power sharing is good. because it helps us to reduce the possibility of conflicts between social groups. Since social conflicts leads to political instability and several problems, power sharing is a good way to ensure the stability of political order. Imposing the will of the majority over others will look like an attractive option in a short run, but in the long run it undermines the unity of the country. So the prudential reason, they stress that power sharing will bring out better outcomes. So once again, why the prudential reason consider power sharing as desirable or excellent? Why? That we are going to study. The first reason is that power sharing, the prudential reason, they consider power sharing as good because it helps us to reduce the possibility of conflicts between social groups. Since social conflicts leads to violence and instability, power sharing is a good way to ensure the stability of political order. Then, imposing the will of the majority over others may look like an attractive option in the short run, but in the long run, it undermines the unity of the country. So in short, the prudential reason, they stress that power sharing will bring out better outcomes. So the second deeper reason, that means the moral reason why we consider power sharing is desirable or excellent or fine. So now we are going to study about the moral reasons why we consider power sharing is desirable. So the first moral reason of this power sharing is that power sharing is the very spirit of democracy. That means in a democratic rule or in a democratic country, power sharing is considered as the very spirit because the people, they are attracting towards a democratic country or a democratic government only through this, only through the importance of power sharing, by understanding the importance of power sharing. A democratic rule involves sharing power with those affected by its exercise and those who want to live with its effects. People should have a right to be consulted on how they are to be governed. And a legitimate government, what's a legitimate government? People's own government. A legitimate government is one where people, through participation, they are having a stake in the system. So once again, what are the moral reasons why power sharing is desirable or excellent? The first moral reason is that power sharing is considered as the very spirit of democracy. A democratic rule involves sharing power with those who are affected with its exercise and those who want to live with its effects. Then, people should have a right to be consulted on how they are to be governed. A legitimate government is one where people, through participation, acquire a stake in the system. And the moral reason, they emphasize power sharing as valuable. So, moral reason, they always emphasize that power sharing is a valuable one. So, these are the two sets of reasons, the prudential and the moral reason, why we consider power sharing is desirable. So my dears, once again we are having a quick recall of what we have studied in our class. First we studied about the ethnic composition of Sri Lanka. Then we studied about the majoritarianism policy. Then about the Act of 1956 and the three main provisions of the Act of 1956. Then we studied the problems why the Sri Lankan Tamils created or they are having a feeling of alienation in their minds. Then we studied the demands created by or put forward by the Sri Lankan Tamils by launching their own political parties. Then we studied about what is a civil war and what were the consequences of civil war in Sri Lanka. Then at last we studied that why power sharing is desirable because of two sets of reasons. One is prudential reason and another one is a moral reason. So that's all for today. Just read your textbooks very carefully 2 or 3 times, watch the video and complete your notes and send to your concerned teachers. Okay my dears, thank you.